Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us for another installment of Slow Art presented by the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. In this installment, we will look at an installation by Richard Long titled Cornwall Summer Circle, completed in 1995. The installation shown here is described in the Moderns catalog by former Modern curator Michael Opping as follows. The 237 blue-gray slate stones in Cornwall Summer Circle, 1995, come from an ancient quarry in Cornwall. Though the stones have a flat surface on which to stand upright, their jagged edges have been left intact, calling to mind the peaks of a mountain range. As in Zen rock gardens, scale becomes not only exaggerated, but strangely ambiguous. At times, Cornwall Summer Circle suggests hundreds of mountains in the form of a circle. Now, the artist responsible for this creation, Richard Long, was born in 1945 in Bristol in the United Kingdom. His childhood was spent in Bristol and near the River Avon. As a boy, he was always attracted to the outdoors and nature, and walking was always part of his daily routine. He first studied art at the St. Martin's School in London, and then from 1962 to 1965, he studied art at the West End of England College of Art back in Bristol. Shown here is a line made by walking, completed in 1967. Some of you may see this as simply a few footsteps in the grass. How can this be art? On the other hand, R.H. Fuchs, in a 1987 essay in a Guggenheim exhibition catalog stated, "The Black Square" by Kazimir Malevich, 1915, slapped the face of history in order to wake it up. I believe Richard Long's line made by walking to be a work of equal importance. Historically, lines on a landscape were common and may have been created for artistic reasons. We will visit this in greater detail in a bit. So what did Richard Long have to say? As far as ideas for art, the landscape puts them into your head. Long's use of walking as an artistic medium has taken on many forms over his career. Shown here is the record of a 100-mile-long walk near the Dartmoor Forest in 1971 and 1972, completed around the New Year's holidays. The art was the actual walk, and the circle on the map the record of the walk, left to memorialize the interaction. In that same tradition, also shown is a photograph of a circle made from stones arranged by Long during a walk in the Andes. In this case, the photograph is the record of the artwork. Richard Long never considered himself a photographer. The pictures simply served to record a sculpture, walk, or event as a memory. This stone circle in the Andes was likely his first. During a BBC interview in 1988, when asked why he used circles, he replied, "I have to say that the first time I used a circle, I had no idea why I used it. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but having made it, it looked great and seemed a very strong and powerful image, and I've used it ever since." Again, the use of circles in art was nothing new, which we will also revisit in a bit. Lines and circles were not the only geometric shapes used by Long. Here we see the use of the X, one X in Wildflowers made by picking the flowers in the negative space, and a stone X in a river in Tennessee, both interactions with the surroundings memorialized with photographs. In addition to the line, circle, and X, he also used the cross and spiral. Long's use of these limited, simple geometric shapes has been suggested as his link to minimalism. While his work is simple and self-contained, it is also highly referential, differing from the truly minimal genre. Since many of the works we have looked at are outdoors, could Long's work be categorized as landscape art? Perhaps he could take his place with the great British landscape artists, such as John Constable or J.M.W. Turner. This categorization doesn't fit either, in that Constable and Turner were memorializing a place in time. Long, on the other hand, is recording a memory of an interaction with the landscape, not the landscape. How about land art? A comparison with Robert Smithson, Walter D. Maria, Michael Heiser, or Nancy Holt. Comparing Robert Smithson's spiral jetty and Long's use of the spiral with seaweed on the ocean shore certainly bear a commonality. These commonalities were, however, disputed by art historian Richard Cork in a 1973 Evening Standard essay when he stated, "In contrast with many other land artists who are tempted by the sheer scale of the territory they employ to indulge in overblown gestures and an almost boorish disregard for their chosen locations, Long takes his cue from the possibilities inherent in the site. Long's art stands at the very opposite from those who seek to impress with bulk, solidity, and monumental excess." Returning to a discussion of lines made by walking, the use of geometric shapes and the use of stones, historically in art, we have myriad examples throughout history, recorded and unrecorded. Shown here are two examples of lines created by the Nazca culture in Peru, likely created between 200 BC and 500 AD. These lines were created by removing the top layer of darker volcanic stones, exposing the lighter colored stones beneath. A lack of human intervention, coupled with a lack of wind and rain in the region since their creation, have preserved these artifacts mostly as they were 2 millennia ago. Prior to the Nazca, the Paracas culture of Peru, sometime around 400 BC, were creating similar artifacts by piling stones, as with the candelabra shown here. It is widely believed that this ancient artifact was used as a navigational tool by Paracas sailors. They would sail north for purposes of trade and use this sculpture as an indication that they were home on the return trip. A primitive art in this style was not limited to South America. Also shown here is the Swinsdale Primitive Stone Circle in the Lake District of England. This is in addition to the better-known Stonehenge Primitive Stone Circle. In fact, there are 900-plus primitive stone circles in England alone. One of these numerous stone circles was in Avebury of Wiltshire, near Bristol, where Long grew up. Hence, he was certainly aware of the ancient stone circle. Richard Long's outdoor stone circles are not a new concept, nor is the Cornwall Summer Circle the only Richard Long stone circle in Texas. Seen here is the Sea Lava Circle at the Shinati Foundation in Marfa, Texas. Donald Judd saw one of Richard Long's stone circles and realized it fit with his vision for the Shinati collection. A significant portion of Richard Long's work has been executed out of doors. In nature, he has also been able to bring the essence of his work indoors. Shown here are two examples of Long's work with stone in simple geometric forms indoors in a museum setting. Note that one is an ellipse, the other a circle. Also note that both are executed in slate. Another example of a circle executed in a gallery from slate is shown here. Note the use of the quarry name Delabole in the title. We see Richard Long in action completing one of his circles in the inset. Stone circles in the gallery are featured in the two previous slides. Shown here is a bit of a departure. Long is using River Avon mud from the river he came to love as a child. This technique was also historically grounded. Long was very aware of the primitive cave paintings in Lascaux, France. Long would actually travel to installations with supplies of river mud, likely resulting in interesting discussions with both airport security and customs officials. He also occasionally used locally sourced mud. The Modern has a work in the collection, Untitled, 1992, which is part of a series of works on paper made with mud from the Mississippi River. Now, while Richard Long didn't use Delabole slate exclusively in his museum sculptures, it was certainly a favored media for him for decades. He used Delabole slate starting around 1980. The slate itself has been quarried and used for building purposes for at least 800 years, and it has been continually quarried since the 17th century. It is still readily available today. The Delabole quarry is currently locally owned, and 80% of the employees can walk to work. We now make it back to the Cornwall Summer Circle in the Modern's collection. One requirement for installation is that the 237 stones be arranged in a circle of 189 inches in diameter. Note that the placement of the stones is on end, suggesting mountain peaks, as discussed earlier. If the sculpture is periodically removed or moved to another gallery space in the museum, Long does not require that it be reinstalled in exactly the same way. In a Tate exhibition catalog in 2009, Long discussed the variability of his circles. I like the fact that every stone is different, one from another, in the same way all fingerprints and snowflakes are unique. So no two circles can be alike. It can be remade in another space and place. Individual stones will be in different places within the work each time. Nevertheless, it is the same work whenever it is remade. Now, Long didn't ascribe any intended deeper meaning to his work either. Earlier in his career, he stated, "When I make a sculpture, all I do is just take a few of those stones and bring them together and put them in a circle and show you. It is enough to use stones as stones for what they are." And while he rejected being categorized as a minimalist, conceptualist, or land artist, he did recognize his connection to the Italian arte povera movement through his use of stone, wood, water, mud, etc. A close-up view of the Delabole slate highlights the color variations and veining in the material, the contrasting rust color resulting from iron compounds deposited in the stratified layers of material, and the pointed, jagged ends of many of the stones. The jagged edges formed a characteristic that appealed to Long, perhaps because they mimicked mountain peaks. Take a moment to look at the stones individually and notice the similarities and yet dissimilarities. An even closer view highlights the saw kerf marks on the stone edges made by the saw blades used to cut the stone specifically for Long. These stones were cut by the quarry workforce and selected by Long. In addition to the jagged edges and ends, they were sawn to highlight the strata of the slate when viewed in the sculpture from above. Again, take a moment to look for the saw blade marks and the stratified layers of the slate. Michael Opping, former chief curator at the Modern, had the following to say about the Cornwall Summer Circle in the museum catalog. Long has been particularly attracted to the austere beauty of stone and the profound simplicity of the circle, a shape that has been continually recreated by all cultures in every age. Over his many years of working with stone, he has learned to carefully handpick each rock or fragment with a view to making a sculpture that has a powerful visual presence, as well as a sense of nature's profound variety of shape, color, and texture. So Cornwall Summer Circle looks at home in a modern art museum gallery, perhaps a Zen garden, or as an ancient stone circle. So we will give the last word to the artist Sol LeWitt, who stated the following about art. It is difficult to bungle a good idea. Thank you for spending time with us today, and we look forward to sharing with you the next installment of Slow Art, presented by the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth.